share a little bit in conclusion about why I wrote this book altogether. And I feel like this excerpt will give you the best idea. I was at Boulder Book, which is the wildlife rehabilitation center that I was volunteering at, Willowbrook. Zoe Gray, my former fellow vet tech, came through the front door with a tall cardboard box in her arms, exclaiming about a long drive to pick up an injured red-tailed hawk. I followed her into the exam room, and she set up the box on the treatment table. Whoever had caught the bird had readied the box nicely. There were 2-inch by 2-inch square windows cut out all around the outside of the box. The people had reportedly found the hawk on the awning of their porch. I crouched down to peer inside. The hawk's eyes bravely met mine. The light of her spirit pierced the shadows of the cardboard surrounding her. I remained motionless, entirely transfixed. I'm not even sure that I drew breath. Those eyes held so much light, so much life. She stood so strong and assured, but the whole picture was askew. This hawk was missing at least half of her upper beak. There was no way to imagine how this bird had survived the pain of the injury and the subsequent bleed out. I was staring into the eyes of the impossible, and I couldn't find my feet. Her right wing hung low. I figured she must have injured that too. I called my husband to let him know that I would be a while, and I turned to offer my help to Zoe. She gladly accepted. I grabbed a pair of thick gloves and a towel to gather the hawk out of the box. The hawk struggled and fought my grasp. I was astounded at how much strength she still had in her crippled body. We laid her on the table, still wrapped in the towel, and pulled her right wing out to examine it. The bones were badly broken, and halfway between her elbow and her wrist. All the tissue around the fracture was heavily swollen and damaged. We could see that the bones had healed at an odd angle. There was no way she could ever fly again. Her fate was sealed. As Zoe placed the isoflurane cup over the hawk's broken mouth, I ran my fingers along the bird's keel. There was no flesh there. The width of my fingers sunk into the feathers below the crest of the keel. And that's the breastbone, is the keel. All I could feel was bone. I looked up at Zoe and asked her to confirm my observation. She buried her fingers in the soft down of the bird's breast and then shook her head in disbelief. "How is this bird still alive?" I said out loud. "How is it still conscious, still standing, still fighting my grip, still watching?" This was the walking dead, a sacred omen. We were in the presence of a blessed beast. I was having an extraordinary out-of-body experience. There was no way this bird could have been breathing, let alone matching my gaze or even standing. Now she was in a sleep she would never wake up from again. For a couple of weeks, I pondered the solemn mystery of the omen. The full story had yet to be written. One afternoon on a car ride, I had a chance to take a light nap. The hawk with the missing beak came back to mind as the car wound through the lush green forest. In the place between sleep and waking, one word drifted in. One word explained it best. The hawk was missing her mouthpiece. I took the first chance I got to go on a journey, and I was directed to journey to a short-eared owl and talk with the owl about what the message meant. I asked, "What can you tell me about the red-tailed hawk, and why did it not have a mouthpiece?" The short-eared owl responded bluntly, "You are our mouthpiece. We have given all of our life energy in trying to communicate with you humans, and we have no life left. We are the walking dead. We can no longer speak for ourselves. We are asking you to speak for us." And so in reading this, I don't mean at all to come across as if I'm special or unique in this. I have no illusions about being chosen or gifted. I'm simply following promptings and trying every day to do the best that I can at what I guess I'm being asked. I'm adding my small voice to the sea of the many voices that have come before me, like Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey, that are alive today or have gone, and help turn the tide. This is the way I've been asked to help others wake up. The animals aren't the walking dead, literally. I understand that. But they are dead to us. We don't know how to connect with them on a soul level, with their souls, with the soul of the land, or with our own souls. And that is where the magic of the shamanic way can offer a cure for humanity. I know a lot of beautiful creatures that gave their lives to this story, and the least I can do is tell it. So thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it. And if you haven't gotten a copy of the book yet, there's Grasha. I definitely encourage you to pick up a copy, and for yourself and for friends. I have about 20 minutes or so. Well, I have about 10 minutes or so for questions, and then I'll be signing copies. So, any questions?
Are these talks at a rehabilitation center?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was initially the book starts out on an island. I was doing caretaking for island foxes in a captive breeding program out in the Pacific Ocean by myself. And so I started having visitations by different hawks and owls and dreams as well, where people that had passed that I knew were coming and visiting me in dreams. So I started having all of these different images and visions and messages coming through that I was trying to figure out. And then around the same time I started to discover shamanism, I also started working with these hawks. So the story really parallels between my experience with learning about shamanism and learning about falconry, because I was working with them in an education program. So we were going out to schools and clubs and doing presentations with the birds. They were ambassadors.
What were your best resources for learning about shamanism?
Yeah, good question. So I really firsthand, so I had the benefit of being introduced to a shamanic practitioner. And so I started working with her one-on-one, and she did healing work for me. And then from there I was so inspired by it and by what she was doing and teaching that we actually moved from Oregon to Colorado so that I could go to her school for 2 years. At that time, there was a lot less out there. There was Michael Harner's Way of the Shaman and Sandra Ingerman's Soul Retrieval, Mending the Fragmented Self, were the two main books available. But there's a lot more out there that you can pick up and read now, so that is one way to learn. But there's a lot of people who are now practicing. It's really experiencing a large resurgence across the world, really, which is a good thing because it was being lost, the tradition of it. So,
So Stacey, did you work with both of the hawks on the wild? Would you call it wildwood?
yeah, at Willowbrook, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was with, no problem. I was with both of them there, yeah.
Okay.
And
At the same time.
different time, one after the other. So Talia was the first, and she was already there when I started volunteering. And then Grasha, she came in during the time that I was there as a young bird. And so she actually grew into adult plumage during the time I was with her. And so I helped man her, they call it, train her to the glove. So, yeah, it's in the, I don't know how many of you here know about shamanism, but there's been a lot of research done. There was a fellow initially started at Mircea Eliade, who was an anthropologist and went around and studied different cultures all over the world on every continent, and found shamanism at the core, or at the root of all of these cultures. So it's been around for tens of thousands of years, and there are some specific core principles in shamanism that you find in every culture. And one of those things is the shamanic journey, the practice of the shamanic journey, and also working with power animals. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. So in the book, the practice I talk about is just primarily just a core shamanic practice, not any particular culture. we all have the opportunity to pick up the practices within shamanism and then imbue it with our own cultural slant, however, whatever we feel drawn to. So some people, you know, are very much drawn to Celtic or Mongolian shamanism or Peruvian, things like that. So, yeah.
With the discovery of the power animal, would you do that over distance for someone? Or do you need to be in the same place as that?
Yeah, I actually do, with a good amount of training, learn how to do long distance work for people. So in shamanism, the idea is that we're working in non-ordinary reality, which is outside of time and space. It's known as the Kairos world. And so distance does not factor in terms of doing healing work for people. So I often do sessions over the phone, and that was a good thing for me because my teacher was here when I initially met her, and then I was in Oregon. So we did a lot of work over the phone and by email, and I did find some people locally as well that I went and did drumming circles with and took classes with there too. So it's good to have both the in person and do that. So. All right, good. I will go ahead and sign books and speak with all of you personally now. Thank you so very much for coming.